Hello and welcome. My name is Bob Atlas. I am one of the co-founders and co-owners of Fire Alumni, and we're here with Chief Tim Sendelbach, Editor-in-Chief of Firehouse Magazine, Firehouse.com, Firehouse Expo, Firehouse World, and their related products. Welcome, Chief.
Well, thanks, Bob, and I appreciate the opportunity.
You know, we've had the opportunity to work together recently, and I've come to know you as a man of great character and integrity. You're a fire service visionary who's leading us into the new era, and yet you have your feet firmly planted on the ground and are able to be in the trenches with fire companies all over the world. Let me just say how fortunate the fire service is to have you as a leader and how grateful we are at Fire Alumni to be able to work with you.
Well, Bob, I appreciate that. I don't know that I'm worthy of all those compliments, but thank you so much.
Well, that's great. We're glad to have you with us today. Could you just give us a little information on who is Chief Tim Sendelbach, your background, family, education?
Well, I'm a second-generation firefighter. My dad was a chief officer in the Wilder Volunteer Fire Department, and I guess, obviously, the inspiration behind my career, behind my pursuit to become a firefighter. In May 28, 1977, I sat on the back porch with my mom watching a small black and white TV, and I watched the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. If you're not familiar with that fire, 165 people perished that night. And me and my mom sat there and we watched it on that small little TV, and then we glanced over top of the TV and we watched it live. My dad was the first fire chief on the scene of that fire, and I think ultimately that it made an impression on me. I don't say that, as an 8-year-old kid that I decided that day to be a firefighter, but certainly it made an impression on me. Originally from Kentucky, I graduated from high school, and I will openly say my parents would likely echo my sentiments in saying there's no way in the world their son would go to college and pursue multiple degrees in anything. But that's exactly what I did. I found some inspiration somehow, some way. When I got to college, I pursued my fire science degree. I stayed at Eastern Kentucky University for 6.5 years. I got my bachelor's degree. I pursued a second bachelor's degree, and then went on and got an associate's degree in emergency medical care. I was just absolutely enthralled by the fire service and everything that it represented and the opportunities for just general satisfaction that it gave me in being a public servant. So after graduating from college, from Eastern Kentucky University, I went on to be a firefighter paramedic in Kansas City. Worked there for a period of time, and I tell people I was kind of a hopscotch firefighter, and some people may look at that with negative context, but the reality was I was a guy that was driven, and I wanted to pursue bigger and better things each and every time. So I left Kansas City and went on to Texas. I was a captain there, and ultimately promoted to assistant chief of operations in Missouri City, Texas. Left there after a period of time, went on to Savannah, Georgia. Savannah, Georgia, I was hired in as an outside training chief. Had an opportunity to just work with some fantastic folks there and develop a number of firefighters over the course of their careers, beginning as civilians all the way up to chief officers. I left Savannah and pretty much finished my active fire service career at North Las Vegas, where I served as the assistant fire chief.
Well, that's fantastic. A lot of time, a lot of energy, and certainly a lot of education and professional experience. It's all very impressive. Thanks for putting that time in for the rest of the fire service, by the way.
Well, I appreciate it.
So did you have a mentor while you were coming up in the fire service? Is there a specific person or a group of people maybe that had a dramatic impact on you?
I think there are many. Like anybody, I look around and there are many people that I want to model myself after. I've attempted to model myself after, and a lot of folks that had an influence on my career. Probably one of the first was my college professor, Ron Hopkins. And, I don't know a lot of firefighters that say their college professor is their mentor, but this guy, very energetic professor, taught in a manner that I wanted to be taught. And I had the opportunity to do a lot of teaching with him. He taught all over the state of Kentucky, and realistically, we went several places throughout the U.S. teaching, and he made a big impression on me. The way he delivered the message, the way he connected the firefighters was very impressionable. he also afforded me opportunities to meet other folks throughout the fire service, and I did two college interns that I think were equally impressionable for me. One was in Seminole, Florida, right outside of Tampa. John Leahy was a former fire chief in Pittsburgh, and at the time, the fire chief in Seminole Fire Rescue brought me down there, showed me one form of leadership. And I'll tell you, if anybody knows John Leahy, they know he's a very strong, firm individual, very militaristic type of leadership. So that was one form of leadership that I was exposed to very early in my career. That following year, I went to Phoenix, Arizona, and was an intern for Chief Brunacini. And I think so many people across the country have mentored or been mentored by Chief Brunacini. But Chief Brunacini was very impressionable on my career, set a real tone for a different form of leadership, and he really taught me how you could be successful by simply being nice, looking out for the customer internally and externally. So I would say those three people, my professor, Chief Leahy, and Chief Brunacini, are the three that have really been the true mentors of my career.
Well, that's fantastic. You had talked earlier, about your dad and having the opportunity to watch the Beverly Hills Supper Club fire. In a little bit more detail, tell us, what was the turning point? What made you decide on a career in the fire service?
You know, I was mowing the grass. This is back in 1985. I was mowing the grass in my parents' house, and the volunteer fire chief, which same fire department my dad was the chief for, Mike Castle. It was a fire chief at the time. I was mowing the grass. I remember it like it was yesterday. He stops next to my parents' house. I'm sitting there, and I stopped the mower, and he said, "Hey, when are you going to come down and join the fire department?" And to be honest with you, the volunteer fire department at the time created a divide in our family. I think it really, the demands on my dad's time, and taking him away from my family, my mom, and my two sisters and I struggled to say, do I really want to do this? But for some reason, that particular day, he came up to me and he asked me when I was going to join, and it just clicked. I went down there that Monday and I joined. And you know what? It's just like you walk in the door and something just basically clicks. And it clicked that night for me. And I immediately wanted to be a volunteer. And oddly enough, and I'll be short with this story, I came home that night. It's just a real simple fill out the application. They handed me a pager, sized me up for some turnout gear, hand me down turnout gear, and sent me home. That night, I'm watching TV in my parents' basement, and the pager goes off for a car fire. And I grab that pager. Now, I have no training. Realistically, I really have no reason to be going to this. But I was a firefighter. I was officially a firefighter on paper. So I grabbed the pager, grabbed my keys, and I go out the door. And my mom stopped me at the door. Said, "You're not going." I said, "Wow." And, I got emotional at the time. And somehow, some way, I came up with this thought. I said, "Mom, what if everybody's mother stopped their son at the door and said, 'You're not going'?" And from that day on, my mom was the first one to hold the keys, get my pager, whatever be the case, and get me out the door. So I made an impression on her. And at the same time, it was an impression that has lasted me through the course of my career. I wanted to be a firefighter, and from that day on, that's what I've done. So.
Well, that's a noble story, and one that I think every firefighter across the country, whether they're volunteer or paid, has that story. They have that moment. They have that defining period that sort of shows them, and tests their mettle, and then talks to them about who they are. What's interesting. We'll talk about this here in a little bit. Is the camaraderie that we've had within our organization, you have, and what's drawn us together. Is the opportunity that we all feel, or actually the obligation that we all feel, to make sure that everybody that comes after us understands just how important that small moment, that defining moment is. And that's really, when the chips are down for any firefighter across the country, and for that matter in the world, when the chips are down, that's the thing they reach into. That's the intestinal fortitude that they grab a hold of, and they think back to that moment, and they say, either this is the moment that I'm going to, make the statement to myself as to who I am, or not. That's a tough moment.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key to what we're talking about here is when the chips are down. You know, a lot of people step up to the plate and say, I want to pursue the fire service as a volunteer or as a career. And sometimes I think we see people pursue this for the wrong reason. But it truly is about when the chips are down, what are you willing to do for basically the community and the civilians that you serve?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're real glad to have the opportunity not just to associate with somebody of your character and your capacity, but to be able to associate with Firehouse and the whole Firehouse brand. You know, let's talk a little bit about the brand. Let's talk a little bit about Firehouse. Tell us about it. Tell us about its purpose. You know, and why is it so important in today's fire service?
You know, I think Firehouse, the brand, to me, it's what I grew up on. It's the magazine that you know was always around the house. The day I signed up for Firehouse magazine, so it made a huge impression on me. You know, I think the pictures caught my eye, the stories, the people that were delivering the stories formulated my career. Where it came from was Dennis Smith at the time was a 13-year firefighter in the FDNY, working in the war years. Probably seen more fire than most people, most entire recruit classes will see in the duration of their career, whether it's a 15-year career or a 30-year career. Dennis Smith had seen some fire. And he started Firehouse Magazine. And what he wanted to do is just simply communicate with firefighters, give them an opportunity a forum to basically communicate about themselves, about their families, and about the lifestyle of being a firefighter. And, you know, he did that in 1976, and the magazine's been running for 38 years. It's expanded to be online and two national and international conferences held on the East and West Coast now. So it's been a huge opportunity.
Yeah, you know, you said something I think that we can all echo. I mean, I know for myself that the minute that I took my first ride along and I knew that I was, you know, destined to become a firefighter, the first thing I did is I went to a firehouse, and after having chatted with the guys for a while, they handed me a Firehouse magazine and sent me home. And I devoured that magazine from cover to cover, every single word, every advertisement, every classified ad. You know, and now here we are, you know, 20 years later in my career, and you know, we have Firehouse Online. We have so many different things. You know, technology has brought us to such a phenomenal point. I mean, that actually, I mean, I'm sure that had something to do, you know, with your decision. So, what made you decide to become an editor and part of the Firehouse team?
That wasn't a decision that you know I sought. I didn't go out or I didn't start my career and say, you know, I want to be the editor in chief of a major publication. In fact, you know, I hate to write. When I was in high school, I hated to read. I'll just be honest with you. What happened was is I was actually doing a presentation at East Meets West in Los Angeles, and a gentleman came up to me after that presentation and introduced himself, and I was somewhat embarrassed that he thought he had to introduce himself. That gentleman was Jim Page. Jim Page was a chief officer in LA County, and he was the technical advisor for the show Emergency, which you know, a 70 generation folks
Yep.
grew up on. That was the inspiration for a lot of us. But Jim Page came up and introduced himself to me. And little did I know, he went back to the publisher of Fire Rescue at the time, and he told him, he said, you need to keep your eye on this gentleman. And that was in 2004. In 2006, I was approached by Fire Rescue to be the editor in chief of that magazine. And I was flattered, I was honored, and I was somewhat taken back. I'm like, wow, that's a pretty significant position. I don't know that I have the talent or the ability to do that. So they offered me the opportunity to do it behind the scenes, just write and review articles and such behind the scenes. And I got to tell you, it turned me upside down. To be able to see all that information and to somewhat be pushed in the direction to read all that was a phenomenal experience. So I got addicted to it. I started liking to read all this stuff and see it on a regular basis. Signed up, and I did that for 7 years. And Firehouse was looking to basically change things up a little bit this past August. I was approached by Firehouse to become the editor in chief and take over the two shows and Firehouse.com. So I never pursued either opportunity. I was very fortunate that people talked, I guess, highly of me. I certainly don't want to brag, but somebody said the right things about me and gave me the opportunity. So.
No, that's a fantastic story, and that that just goes to show for the folks that are listening that doesn't matter where you are in your career or how old you are or how old you are not. Opportunities are there for the individuals that not necessarily seek them out, but are able to recognize them. Whether that opportunity be being part of a new fire organization or promoting within the fire service, or an opportunity to be a contributor like yourself, and a major contributor, by the way. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's great that you shared that. How do you like it so far? How's it been for you?
It's been a challenge. Obviously, I was appointed the new editor-in-chief on August 1st, and I will say this gentleman was a mentor of mine just as well. Harvey Eisner had held this position for 20 years, had been a contributor to Firehouse brand in its entirety, the magazine, a majority of his time, for 35 years. And unfortunately, he passed away in October. Our goal was very simply, I served as the editor-in-chief, and Harvey played the emeritus role. And we really wanted to show the American Fire Service how true succession planning can occur and how it should look. And that was my goal at coming on. I wanted Harvey to be comfortable with me being the editor-in-chief. And I think we were working our way towards that. Anybody that's ingrained in the fire service knows you enjoy the job, you got passion, and any form of change creates a struggle. And Harvey and I were working through that in the fact that he wanted to be the editor-in-chief, and he is the editor-in-chief. And one of those things is when you talk about succession planning, how do you do it, and what is the right time? And I don't know that anybody ever knows, but we were working down that path, and we had a plan to take Firehouse to a new level. And at this point, I'll carry on his message. That'll be my career goal with Firehouse, is to continue on his message, and certainly the message of Dennis Smith. So long and short, it's been a challenge, but it's an exciting challenge, and I'm looking forward to the continued journey.
Well, you mentioned a couple of names. Chief Smith and obviously Chief Eisner, and anybody in the fire service that's either coming in or been around for a while knows both of those gentlemen to be pillars of the firefighting community with tremendous amount of experience and need I say passion. Obviously, that's a tremendous legacy. For you to be, stepping in as the third editor-in-chief, and the legacy of those two gentlemen, we can't tell you how fortunate, we all feel to have you there with your history and your background, your support, and we'll definitely do as part of the fire service. I can commit to you that, the fire service will support you, because we want to see nothing but the best and nothing but success for you. So tell us, we're looking at the upcoming Firehouse World program and Firehouse Expo program. Tell us a little bit about, what are the purpose of both of the conferences? Talk to us about conferences.
I think when you look at conferences, it's an opportunity to get out of the norm. All of us at some point in our career attend local training sessions, whether it's stuff that we offer internally at our local fire department, or the county offers it, or the department next door. This is an opportunity to basically assemble with firefighters from all over the country and all over the world, for that matter, and exchange ideas. I think we also know that firefighters enjoy the networking, sharing ideas, sharing their problems with other folks and other firefighters, and getting solutions. So when I look at Firehouse World, one of the things that we've talked about, and kind of my vision for Firehouse World, is very simply this. I don't believe in taking a East Coast conference and bringing it west. I think there's enough of a variance between the East and West Coast fire departments that you have to make it very personal. So the vision for Firehouse World moving forward will be that Firehouse World will become a global conference. And my goal with that is to capitalize on the world name, but make it global for this reason. Remove the borders, the barriers of education and opportunity for firefighters. When we stay local, we learn local, and the tree grows with very few branches. The American Fire Service needs to learn from everybody. The folks overseas have been doing this a lot longer than we have. And I'm not saying that their tactics and their methodologies are all appropriate for us. But the last thing I think I should do as somebody that has an opportunity to bring technology and bring a conference to the fire service is limit firefighters in their knowledge base and who influences them. So one of the things we're going to do is we're going to kind of change the world up over a period of time is we're going to try new things. The first is going global, having international influence, and focusing very specifically on technology. Embedding technology in Firehouse World to the point that we start revealing new technology at Firehouse World. We also want to talk about executive leadership, a higher level of leadership that is taught at Firehouse World. So in essence, it certainly doesn't mean that Firehouse Expo or East Coast Conference will be kind of any less of a conference, but what we're going to do is create a tiered system. At Firehouse Expo starts at one level, and then you basically graduate up to Firehouse World. So it's a stair-step process as opposed to matching conferences. So getting to Firehouse Expo, grassroots strategy and tactics, a lot of focus on the hands-on and the grassroots task of fighting fires. And all aspects of fighting fires will be our focal point there. Hands-on will definitely be a prevalent factor in the East Coast Firehouse Expo show.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I'll tell you, that is straight up some forward-thinking, visionary approaches. That's refreshing to hear. We talk so often, around the firehouse, around the table with a cup of coffee in our hand about, the changing fire service. And I'm sure that your dad thought, and so did mine, that when we came into the fire service, that we were going to change the fire service and that things were changing. And so the staunch reality is that the fire service is changing. It's always been changing. The only thing that remains constant, at least in the fire service and life in general, is the fact that we're always changing. So tremendous amount of respect for your ability to kind of see that future and bring that future forward. In that vein, you and I had this conversation the other day. We talked about, what's great for the incumbents. And you've given us some example of, an incumbent firefighter is going to be able to start and go through a tiered process. Talk to us a little bit about what a future firefighter can expect. I know we've had these conversations about, the upcoming programs and what future firefighters will get from them.
I think what I envision the new fire service being, and I say new fire service, every day is a new fire service.
Sure.
I think it is going to look differently. I think I may have modeled to some degree what's going to occur in the future. And I'm certainly not sitting here with a crystal ball, but I mentioned that I was a hopscotch firefighter. I wasn't a firefighter that stayed in one place for 30 years. I think we're going to see a lot of that occur. This next generation of firefighters, they like new challenges and they're willing to basically push the envelope a little bit. And I'll tell you what, I like that. I think that's important, that they push the envelope, and I'm asking them to push the envelope. I think at the same time is that as we pass that baton to the next generation, we have to be forward-thinking enough to say, let's set the stage. I oftentimes ask firefighters all over the country when I teach, I said, how many of you are currently setting the stage for the next generation? I.e., do you use computers on the modern fireground? And very few hands will go up because they want to focus on it's blue collar. We don't want to get techno savvy. We have blue collar work to do. And to some degree that's true. But the reality is technology is going to be a driving force, and this next generation is bringing it in massive quantities, and we've got to truly set the stage in the right manner and not say that it's all about the way it used to be. We've got to be willing to be open and forthright with that type of technology and opportunity for them.
No, you're absolutely right. We've got to remember that we have a history. The American Fire Service has a storied history and a storied past, and it's all good for that reason. But yeah, you're right. Absolutely, technology is one of the newer things. The newer firefighters are going to learn a different way. We talked just the other day about a new addition to Firehouse and Firehouse Expo, the World and the Expo program. We talked about the future firefighter experience. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I got to give you kudos for that. The future firefighter experience to me that's my obligation. to the American Fire Service is to continue the tradition of passing it on to the next generation. And, I learned that in college. I was afforded many, many opportunities to attend conferences and to participate in a number of things. And it was people that literally were saying, we want to set the stage, the right stage for the next generation. And I think the Future Firefighter program is all about that, exposing young men and women to what the fire service is all about, what it brings them, the rewards as a career, and also what they do for their community. So people like yourself getting up there on the stage and sharing your experiences and answering the questions of this young generation, I think is important. And I'll tell you right now, you've got my firm commitment and the entire team of Firehouse to continue that program, both at Firehouse World and Firehouse Expo. I believe it is that important.
We're grateful for that. Both, Chief Steve Prisborowski, good personal friend of both of ours, and myself and you have had many conversations about that. We really truly believe, just like anything else, just like you, it's our obligation to pass the baton to the next generation. We would be remiss if we didn't take all of our learning experiences and give them an opportunity to become better because of them. We talked about speakers briefly and the opportunity to speak at the Firehouse events. Why is it such an honor for somebody to have that opportunity?
I tell people this all over the country. I go to small conferences and I talk to folks there, and I look at that as an opportunity. That's kind of like the farm team for me. I want to find the best of the best that are teaching locally. And if their message is important enough, I want to take it to the national level and not isolate them to be teaching the same people they've been teaching for 10, 15, 20 years. Let's echo that message. Let's get that message to all firefighters across the country and in some forums around the world. So when you speak at a national conference, that's what it's about, is literally your message is that important. Somebody has recognized the importance of your message and wants to share it with a bigger audience base. And I'll tell you, that's kind of the crux behind me being an editor. Why would I step away from the turnout boots and the helmet to become an editor? Well, it's about influence and opportunity. The opportunity that I had as a chief officer, I could influence a few people within our respective organization. But as the editor-in-chief and the opportunity to seek out these people to speak at a national level and write at a national level, there's a huge influential opportunity there that is far greater than any single department was going to offer me.
That's fantastic. I'm glad you have that perspective. Every year, Fire Alumni and Las Positas College present our program called the Firefighter Candidate Workshop. And this year, we've asked you to be with us, and you'll be our keynote speaker on March 22nd in 2015, shortly around the corner. We're excited to have you, and we're looking forward to having you join us.
Well, I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to it as well. Anytime you get a chance to speak to firefighters or potential firefighters, it's a great opportunity.
What do you plan to speak about at the upcoming candidate workshop?
I've thought about this quite a bit, and it's the same message that I would tell a civilian looking to pursue the fire service career or a veteran firefighter. And it's basically 5 things. It spells out the word pride. Deep down, that's the foundation of what the fire service is all about. But looking at the P, there was a lesson that I learned as the chief of training in Savannah. Our motto was basically prevention, protection, and professionalism. And when I look at that, I think that it's in that exact order. Our first obligation is prevent harm, prevent the consequences of fire, protect the general public in every form and fashion that we can, and do it in the most professional manner that we possibly can. To respect the profession. Talk about those who have come before us and set the stage, respect what they've done in the firm foundation and traditions they've created. I also want to talk about being inquisitive. Ask questions. There's one thing that this generation brings that is a huge benefit to the American Fire Service. It's being inquisitive, asking those questions. To be dedicated. Be dedicated to the profession. This is not something that you come in and you put in your 24, your 48, or whatever your shift is. You got to be dedicated. It's above and beyond just simply punching a clock and putting your time in. There are lives on the line in all forms and fashion, not just on fires. I'm talking about everything we do. There's a potential life at risk. And then lastly, the two things that I think are the driving force that I hope everybody adopts is education and exercise. The things that are going to create longevity of your career, both developmentally and professionally, are education and exercise. So kind of packaging that up in a message is what I'm looking to share.
That's fantastic. I hope everybody that's watching, takes the time to write that stuff down, because, right inside there are, golden opportunities. A lot of the things that we do is we talk with our future firefighter candidates about being able to, share their story, in their interview, and not necessarily tell a story, but more like share an experience. And you just kind of hit on some key points that will always be good information for them that they can take into an interview with them, and really to try and reach down deep inside and try and figure out what it is that motivates them. We call that finding out what your why is, and that's exactly what you're talking about. Very nice. Why did you choose to participate with the Firefighter Candidate Workshop? And you're traveling a distance to get here, so what's behind that?
It's an opportunity. I look at it. I've got to get the next generation of readers, contributors, instructors for Firehouse, and this is an opportunity to influence them early and get the brand recognition and the mindset that Firehouse set for me. And anytime I can talk to a new firefighter coming in the door and make that first impression on them, I think it's something I need to do. And I'm definitely excited by the opportunity.
Well, we're excited to have you. So before we go, can you just tell us, one life-changing piece of information that someone shared with you in your career, or in the fire service, and what words of encouragement would you like to share with, current firefighters and future aspiring firefighters?
Well, there's a couple that I'll say. The first and foremost, I think what I'd like to share, and this is going to sound very self-serving, so forgive me for this, is to read. Read magazines, read publications, read anything you possibly can get your hands on, and continue your professional development. The two words of advice I would give anybody coming into this profession or continuing in this profession is selflessness and humility. Selflessness, understanding that this profession is about personal sacrifice, and humility. We get paid a lot of homage in the general public, but I think what really balances out who we are and what this profession is all about is our ability to be humble public servants. So read as much as you can, be selfless, understand that you are supposed to be, and you want to exemplify that characteristic of a humble public servant.
That's fantastic. Great information. Thanks, Chief, for being with us today. We'd like to thank our sponsors of our upcoming 2015 Firefighter Candidate Workshop, Las Positas College, San Francisco Police Credit Union, and firecareers.com. And for our viewers' information, Chief Sendelbach will be with us live at the Firefighter Candidate Workshop on March 22nd, 2015 at Las Positas College in Livermore, California. You can go to firealumnievents.com to register. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on March 22nd, 2015. Thanks for being here, and stay engaged.